Can I ask a question, guys?
You can.
When do you think superhero movies will end?
Hopefully never.
When do you think it will? Do you think it'll ever end?
I hope not.
Well,
no, I'm not saying I want. I'm not saying like I want it to or anything, but like.
I mean, just you wait until Squirrel Girl comes out. That's gonna be. That's gonna blow your mind.
Squirrel Girl.
Yeah.
And what is Squirrel Girl's thing?
She's
Squirrels.
part squirrel. And she can talk to squirrels, and she has all the relative strength of a squirrel.
Wait, what?
What? This is the thing, though. It's like Squirrel Girl. Whenever you say it, it sounds ridiculous. Why is that any more ridiculous than Spider-Man, Batman?
No, it's not.
Like,
it isn't. But I just wonder when we're going to reach a critical mass here, where like we can't do any more superhero films. We can't do it.
There's always
We've got to
more.
Stop.
Superhero films will start to fade out when Hollywood finds their next superhero film.
Yeah.
And Hollywood are going hard at the moment on video game films. That's their next.
That could be the next one if they get their acts
That's what
together.
they're trying to make the next superhero film.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've got written down here. I mean, we already talked about Mortal Kombat. I've got Borderlands and all the casting for that. They're doing the Last of Us TV series. We're getting a Twisted Metal TV series. The last Twisted Metal game came out in 2011.
Yeah.
I said Twisted Metal to James yesterday, and James shrugged.
Yeah.
That's how relevant that game is. But we're getting a TV show, and it's got Will Arnett in it.
It's just sticking the brand name onto the ideas, isn't it? Because Twisted Metal is a driving game, isn't it? Where you shoot you kind of a bit Mad Maxy type of thing.
It's basically Death Race.
Yeah. So you can't do a TV series just of that.
It's going to be Fast and Furious, but an 18.
Yeah, I mean that sounds alright.
I do think though, like, I think, Danny, my prediction. I'm not too sure on superhero films where they'll go away in the sense of like there will be zero again.
Oh, they'll never be zero again.
I wonder if surely, like all bubbles, it will burst, and then it will kind of like I say, like the Western was like back in its day. There were so many being made in the 50s and 60s, and then the bubble burst and society evolved and films changed, but they still made the odd one every couple years.
They still make westerns.
And today, they still make westerns today, like what, Hateful Eight, Bone Tomahawk. Yeah. I watched the News of the World. I watched it a week ago. Paul Greengrass, Tom Hanks. That's a western on Netflix right now, brand new.
Yeah.
Awards consideration. That's a western. They still make them. I think for superhero films, surely just throughout film history, it's got the cycle's got to repeat. However, these all happened pre the internet and streaming, and every single studio has to make their own back catalogue. So there's this big like question mark next to it of like, Marvel's such a juggernaut. It's so like I don't know this can, I don't know where, I just don't know. Like, how can this keep going?
It seems to have replaced kind of something in our society, like this whole era we're in at the moment. I don't know what it is, but it's like, like we were talking about how there's no subcultures anymore, really. Like,
we were off camera,
Yeah, off camera we were talking about that. Like, in the 90s, you had, like, the grunge movement. In the 80s, you had, like, the electronic movement and, so on and so forth and stuff. You don't really have that now in terms of music.
Yeah,
but
like punk.
It's like, but you have, like, these really diversified different, like, fucking brands and franchises and stuff that are streamed to us. Like, you've got the superhero thing. A lot of people's identities are formed like from these superhero movies, aren't they? In the same way they used to be like
James.
There we go. James is really.
Oh yeah.
It's just interesting. It's just interesting because like it's mad. It's just mad to think about what's the next thing that everyone's going to be like obsessed with. Is it always going to be superhero films?
I feel like the sort of superhero films like came about because they filled the vacuum of like the
good films
of the 90s, early 2000s like action films.
I was gonna say they're the evolved action movies.
Yeah.
Because the superhero films in the 80s, it was Stallone and Schwarzenegger. They were the superheroes, and it's
Yeah.
just evolved into Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth. It's the same big muscly men, but now they've got the CGI
It's the same.
to do
Yeah.
lightning.
We've always liked the hero fantasy, haven't we? All the best films have an aspect of that, even if they're like done in subtle ways. It's someone who overcomes adversity and succeeds basically. And the superhero genre is just like that on steroids, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. The other thing with superhero films is it's about the timing. The reason that superhero films have become super popular now is like the comics have always been the comics have always been pretty popular. They've been pretty popular for years, but now is the period of time when they can take what is seen in a comic and accurately recreate it on screen without it looking goofy, cheesy, or just cheap.
But I would argue that when Superman 1978, I think it was, came out, they probably looked at that and went, "Whoa, they've brought the comic to life."
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's just at the time you always think it is. Like, in 20 years, you'll probably look back at the MCU and be like, "Oh God, they thought that was realistic."
It's like in the slogan, isn't it? You will believe a man can fly, because it was this
Yeah.
brand new.
I'm just saying that, like, I think that the reason that we've got like this sort of almost oversaturation of superhero films is because technology's moved on far enough that now they're like, oh well, we want to do a Superman film, but back in the 70s it's like, oh, we want to do a Superman film. It's like, well, who are we going to make him fight? And there's like, well, there's this Doomsday guy in the comics, and it's like, well, we can't really make him without putting a guy in a giant goofy costume or doing some dodgy 70s 80s CG.
Yeah.
Whereas now they can easily be like, oh well, now we've got a whole range of these new characters and stuff that we can accurately portray.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Because CGI is so readily available and is now becoming cheaper than practical effects.
Yeah,
it's only going to get more insane. Like, I truly believe, like, the Mandalorian, the volume, it actually is the future of filmmaking. It's the cynic in me believes that all film will be made in the volume.
The volume being the sort of LED surround
the big
things,
LED video game engine where you just have a big screen and that's your set, and they won't shoot on location anymore because it would just all be in the volume. That's the cynic in me that kind of just believes
I think eventually
that's where we're heading. That's just where we're gonna head.
I think at the moment we've still got some because you've still got some directors that are pushing for more practical things. So I think if we do move to the volume being the norm, you will still get those sort of old timers who are like, no, I like shooting on set. I want to do it more real if I can.
I was going to say that there'll always be those people that push for the practical and push for to film to film in a more classic manner and create a film in a more classic manner. So even if the volume does become the norm, there'll still be films that are filmed on location. But I do agree that it is kind of worrying.
I don't think it is though, because everyone who's like filmed with the volume seems to be like singing its praise and saying how good it is, and like I think actors who've worked with it have said it's so much better than green screen.
I think it's a good step.
It's better than green screen.
Green and blue screen in 5-10 years they'll be gone. You won't use them anymore.
No,
I truly believe it. It'd just be the volume for anything.
If they can afford it.
If they can afford it, but it's weird though, like, because it'd be like. The volumes, like, it's like elements of post-production will then move to almost pre-production, and the filming's done near the end, because all the post stuff where you do all the CGI, all the set will be done in pre, and you do that first, and then you do the filming right at the end with your actors. So it's almost like
That's
way the structure of the filmmaking will almost change.
Yeah, that's pretty mad.
It's going to be weird. Yeah, for the audio listeners, I moved my hands around in a weird.
He did Big Fish, Little Fish, Cardboard Box.
I did. Yeah. It's crazy.
Interesting times
where things are going, and
I still reckon we'll all have our faces put into films in the future, and we'll pay to
I'd love that.
be the star of the show. Like, I think that'll definitely happen.
Honestly, that was something that crossed my mind. Particularly when like stuff like Rogue One came out, I was like, man, actors can die and still be in movies now.
Yeah.
Because of the technology. It's mad.
That topic I don't know if sits well with me. No. I don't know how I feel about the idea of bringing, because I just like the idea of, oh, you just have another actor do an interpretation of the role and they can do their own thing on it, and it just gives somebody else a job. But I guess if you're hiring CGI people, that's like tens of thousands of people to do a job, so Or maybe not.
Maybe. I was saying it more just because,
It's like an ethical
it
thing.
doesn't look very good.
Oh, yeah, it's that as well.
It will eventually, though. It looks seamless.
I was going to say,
Eventually, yeah.
It may well look completely seamless. You won't be able to tell.
Yeah, there could be a point where it gets so good you can have, like, to superhero films, you could have, like, a young Michael Keaton, a young Adam West, and a young Affleck all just hanging out. And it'd just be weird.
yeah,
The actors will sign the rights away to their likenesses
to
while
their
they're still
face.
alive, and they won't even have to act.
I think
in
they already
films.
have
Yes.
done. I think that they already have done, to be
Oh
honest.
my
I legit
God.
think they have.
I know that it's already in people's like clauses and contracts and even their wills, because like Robin Williams had in his will that Disney have loads of footage of Robin Williams in the VO booth doing stuff for Genie, and he wrote that they're not allowed to use that footage until he's been dead for at least 35 years, I think it is.
Wow.
I'm telling you now, if that hadn't been in his clause, they would 100% have just recycled that footage for the live action one.
Yeah, they might have done.
110%.
Oh god, that'd be so ghoulish though. That I wouldn't have liked to have seen that.
No, that would have been horrendously weird.
No,
Yeah,
I think there would have been a massive
uncomfortable.
backlash about that, because that would
Yeah.
just be pure. That's just so tasteless.
Unless Robin Williams had it written, yes, if you do a remake of Aladdin, use my voice.
Yeah.
Then I like.
If he's on camera saying it, I'll believe it.
I was gonna say it's one of them. It's one of them things when they do sort of like CGI faces now. It's kind of uncomfortable, but it's like the families have given their blessing. So
Yeah. I bet that's Harrison Ford's dream, though. He'd be like, wait, what? You can make Star Wars films with Han Solo and you don't have to wheel me out. Do it, please. Go for it.
Yeah, it's
You can just sit.
or just
and get
films in
stoned all
general.
day.
Bruce Willis would be like, I don't have to be.
Yeah.
I don't have to be here. Yeah, do what you want with me. Oh, it's both worrying but also interesting. And yeah, when will this superhero bubble burst?
It's got to there's got to be there's got to be like a point of critical mass where it's like we've ran out of superheroes. We don't know what else to do now. We actually literally ran out of stories to tell. We have
You
to
say
stop.
that, though. Like,
I
these
don't
stories have
agree with that
been...
bit.
I was going to say, they've been being written for decades
True.
at this
Yeah.
point.
I don't agree
we've
with that because
barely tapped
they'll
the
just
surface.
because by that time they have run out. They'll just redo them again.
Yeah, that's
I
very
was-
true.
Yeah, I was going to say write new
Yeah.
ones, but yeah, you're probably right.
I was gonna
There's not
say,
new
like-
ones, James. Originality's dead, mate.
I was gonna say we're already getting to the point in like Marvel comics where they're like Civil War 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on then.
They'll just redo it again. But yeah, surely the bubble will burst when the audiences stop going to it, and turn away from it.
But will they?